Do you have a crochet hook that you're learning how to use? Do you have a ball of lightweight yarn like an 8-ply, DK or light worsted? Do you have chilly hands? Stick around and I'll show you how to make my soft and simple fingerless gloves. We'll be making a pair of these simple fingerless gloves. The pattern is written in US stitch terms and it's worked in the round. We'll start working at the band and work our way up to the fingers. The band's worked in single crochet and the body of the glove is worked in half double crochet. We'll have to increase the stitch count when we get to the body to fit our hands, and then we're going to work a thumb gap. When we get up to the fingers, we'll change back to single crochet for added stability and reduce our stitch count so it fits nicely. I'm going to be working with this 4 Seasons Marvel Soft 8-ply in this very long colour number here, which is a soft blue-grey colour, very pretty, but I'm not going to be using this ball of yarn. I'm going to be using this little leftover bit. So if you made the Soft and Simple Slouchy with me and you started with 100 grams or about 3.5 ounces of yarn, you should have enough left over to make yourself this matching pair of gloves. As well as your yarn, you're going to need a 5mm crochet hook. Now, your yarn label probably suggests either a 4 or a 4.5mm hook, and you can use that if you'd like to. I just used the 5mm for this pattern because I particularly was trying for a very soft pair of gloves, and the larger hook size does give you that. You'll also need a pair of scissors for cutting and snipping, a stitch marker. If you made the Soft and Simple Slouchy with me, you're going to love that we don't move this stitch marker around nearly as often. I actually just use it at the very end to help me position the buttons. I've gone for buttons that are like complementary to the one that I popped on my beanie so that I've got a nice match set. And you will need an embroidery or darning needle to weave in your ends and sew on your buttons. Grab your hook and grab your yarn and let's get started. Now I'm popping instructions up in the top left corner so that you can move at your own pace. Otherwise, make a slip knot with me. This is the tail end of the yarn and this is the working end attached to the ball. I take the tail end up over the top of my finger and hold it in place there so I can grab the working end. See, it makes a little cross. I lift the working end up over the top of my finger and hold both ends in place now. So I can carefully lift this piece up over the tip of my finger, tighten it up, pop your hook in there, pull on the working end a little bit to tighten it up, and that is a slip knot, and we are good to go. To state the obvious, everybody's hands are a slightly different size, and I'd like to show you how to make a pair of gloves that actually fits your hands. My hands are on the small side, and I'm going to begin by chaining 22. You pick a number, a guesstimate really, and chain that, and when we get to round 1 we're going to try the gloves on and see whether we need to take some chains away or add some to it. But for now, let's get chaining. We need to yarn over and pull through. That is 1. Yarn over and pull through. That's 2. Yarn over and pull through. That's 3. Yarn over and pull through, that is 4. Pause the video here and keep chaining. Try to keep count of your chains, and I will meet you in just a moment and show you how to start turning this chain into a glove. This is my chain of 22. I'd like you to do 2 things at this point. I'd like you to make sure your chain doesn't have any twists or kinks in it, and I'd like you to make sure you know which is the front and which is the back. The front is the smoother side and the back has these little bumps on it. Can you see them? It might actually be easier to run your fingers along the chain and feel which is the smoother side, and that will be the front. You also need to know how many chains you have. So this shape here is 1 chain. This would be 2, this would be 3. The loop that's on your hook, we do not count as a chain. So now I'd like you to lay your chain out carefully with the flat side up the whole way around to make a little circle, and this spot here in the first chain is where you need to pop your hook. I'll show you really closely. Just catch 1 loop of that first chain and that's the spot you need to go to make sure you don't get a twisted circle. Now we're going to slip stitch it, so yarn over and pull through both of those loops. And that is the little circle that makes the bottom of your glove. We're going to start round 1 by chaining 1. So yarn over and pull through. That is not going to count as a stitch, that's just to get us up to the right height. Round 1 is going to be worked in single crochets. So our first single crochet goes just here. Insert your hook. So you have your loop and you've got one loop of the chain. Yarn over and pull through that loop of the chain. So you have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through both of those loops. And that is a single crochet. I'm going to pop a stitch marker in the top of that single crochet just to show you how to do that. I'm not going to do it for the rest of the pattern. So when you're using a stitch marker, you need to pop it under both loops of that little V shape that form the top of a stitch. That will help you when we reach the end of round 1 and we're trying to slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet. We need to put 1 single crochet into each chain all the way around. So for me, I'll have 22 single crochets at the end of this round. Insert your hook, yarn over and pull a loop up, so you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both of those loops. I'll show you that one more time. Insert your hook into the chain, catching just 1 loop, yarn over and pull through the chain to pull up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both of those loops. If you're finding it a little bit fiddly working these single crochets into the chain, round 2 is a little bit easier because the top of a stitch is much more stable. So you keep working your single crochets into the chain, pause the video here and I'll meet you as we're nearing the end of round 1. I'm nearly at the end of round 1 and I've got 1 stitch left to do, but if you're just beginning, you'll probably think I've got 2 spaces left to work into. Okay, so 1 stitch goes in here, and this space here with a chain 1 coming out of it is actually the other half of the very first chain. It's where we slip stitch to join a circle, and if you were to put a stitch in there, you would increase your stitch count every round, so be careful you don't do that. Leave this space, the stitch that is not a stitch, alone. That's our chain 1. That's the top of our first single crochet. So slip your hook in there, yarn over, pull through, and pull through again to slip stitch, which finishes round 1. So take your stitch marker out. I'm not going to use one again for the rest of it, but if you'd like to keep it going, you do that. So pull up a little bit of a loop because this is a good point to check whether this is going to fit your hand before we've done too much work. You want it to be reasonably firm because crochet does stretch, but obviously you need to be able to get your hand in there. So go back, add a few chains, take a few chains out. I know it's a little bit of a pain, but it's worth it to make sure it fits properly. So I guess I'll see you back here when you've gone back and got that chain to the right length and redone round 1. This is quite a good point for me to just show you or remind you how to count stitches, because you will need to be able to count your stitches to follow this pattern properly. So when we talk about counting stitches, we're talking about counting this little V shape just here, both halves of it. So that is 1 stitch from the top. That would be 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5. It'll gradually start to make sense as you do more of it, but initially it's quite hard to recognize what a stitch is. Let's start round 2 now by chaining 1 to get us up to height, and we're going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch. So insert your hook and catch both loops of the stitch below, yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through both those loops. It's much the same as what we did in round 1, except we're working into the top of stitches. So slip your hook in there and make sure you've got both little loops of the V, yarn over and pull through the V, so you've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. That stitch has got a stitch in it already, this stitch doesn't. Insert your hook under that V, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. One more time. Insert your hook under the V, yarn over and pull up a loop, 2 loops, yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. At the end of this round, you should have exactly the same number of stitches as you had in the round below. So I'm going to have 22 stitches. You pause the video now, keep working those single crochets, and I'll meet you at the end of the round to show you what to do next. I'm putting the last couple of stitches in round 2 in, and I've just popped back to double check that you are not accidentally adding any extra stitches in to your rounds. So this spot here does not get a stitch. The chain 1 is coming out of it, and then that is the top of our first single crochet. That is the stitch that is not a stitch. Leave it alone. Just do a slip stitch straight to the top of that first single crochet. That's the end of round 2. Now rounds 3, 4 and 5 are exactly the same as round 2. You just put 1 single crochet in the top of each single crochet all the way around, and you'll end up with exactly the same stitch count at the end of each row. Before I leave you to it, this is also the point where I like to turn my work. It means we're working our stitches around the outside of the glove, which is slightly less fiddly as the project starts to get bigger. Okay, I'll leave you to work round 3, round 4 and round 5, and I will meet you again at the beginning of round 6. Welcome to round 6. Rounds 6, 7 and 8 are all the same, and they all start with a chain 1, and they're all worked in half double crochet. Half double crochets, yarn over, insert your hook under the stitch. So I've got 2 loops and the stitch on my hook. I yarn over and pull up a loop so that I have 1, 2, 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, and that is a half double crochet. Yarn over, insert your hook under the stitch, 1 loop, 2 loop and the stitch, yarn over and pull through the stitch so that you have 3 loops, yarn over and pull through 1, 2, 3. You can't get them all at once, doesn't matter. Look, both of those stitches look the same. No prizes for going through all at once. It all just comes with practice. So I'll show you that a couple more times. We yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over and pull up a loop so there are 3 on the hook, and then yarn over and pull through those 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the 3 loops on the hook. And that is the half double crochet. So for these rounds we're going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way around. So our stitch count for the rounds is going to remain stable, which for me is 22 stitches. Keep a real eye on your stitch count. Make sure you're not adding or losing a stitch, particularly at that end spot with that funny stitch that is not a stitch spot. I'll pop back in a moment just to show you how you finish off between rounds 6, 7 and 8. So pause the video and meet me when you're ready to finish off this round. As promised, this is what the end of round 6, 7 and 8 should look like. I've put my last half of double crochet in. That is the stitch that is not a stitch. That is my chain 1 that got me up to height, and that's the top of the half double crochet. So I'm just slip stitching to the top of that half double crochet. Easy as that. I'll see you at the beginning of round 9. I am at the beginning of round 9, and round 9 is an increase round. So given that we're all probably making slightly different size gloves, I'd like you to fold your glove in half and look at it from the top. We're going to be putting an extra stitch in round about here, here, and here. We'll also be putting an extra stitch in around about here, but I'll walk you through that one. So we'll begin by chaining 1 to get us up to height, and we'll put a half double crochet in at the beginning, just as we normally would. will keep working around in half double crochets. It's my third half double crochet, my fourth half double crochet, my fifth half double crochet, and I'm going to pop my sixth half double crochet in here, and it's going to have a little buddy. Right in that same stitch, I'm putting an extra half double crochet, and that's all we made by increasing. Nice and simple. 2 in that same spot. Okay, I keep working my way around with 1 half double crochet in each stitch until I feel I'm roughly another quarter of the way along. Just to prove to you how unimportant it is to be exact here, I have already lost count, and I'm just going to put my extra half double crochet in right about here. So this half double crochet is going to get a little buddy. There we are, another one in that same stitch. Okay, keep working my way around a little bit further. I need to put one more increase in before I get back to the beginning of this round. And I'm going to put that increase in just here. So 2 half double crochets in this spot. There's its little buddy squishing in there. Okay, just 1 half double crochet in each spot until we get round to the beginning. Oh, I need a little bit more yarn. Sorry, I'm working off a home round bobbin, and they just don't give out yarn as easily, do they? All right. Now I'm going to get you to do exactly what I've been telling you not to do every other round. I'm going to get you to put a stitch into the stitch that is not a stitch. We're very deliberately going to increase our stitch count by putting one in that spot. And when you've done that, you can just slip stitch to the top of that first half double crochet to finish round 9. So with those 4 increases, I've taken my stitch count up to 26. And round 10 is not an increase round, so that's the stitch count for round 10 as well. I'm going to work 1 half double crochet into each stitch for most of the way around. However, when we get close to the end, we're going to do something a little bit different. So pause the video, and when you get to about here, switch it back on, and I will show you what to do at that point. So I'm back, and I'm near the end of round 10, and in the very last stitch of round 10 and in the stitch that is not a stitch, we're going to work a half double crochet decrease, and we're going to do that because crocheted gloves, they can gape a bit, and otherwise you'd get a little hole at this point which will make your hand cold. So yarn over, insert your hook into that last stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You've got 3 loops on your hook. Pop your finger on top of those to hold them in place, and put your hook into the stitch that is not a stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You've got 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. That's called a half double crochet decrease. Slip stitch to the top of that first half double crochet. Putting that decrease in spreads 1 stitch over 2 stitches, and it fills a funny little gap in. So chain 1, and we will start round 11, which is just the same as round 10. So work your half double crochets and unpause the video when you're ready to see the half double crochet decrease again. I'm at the end of round 11, and I'm going to show you that half double crochet decrease one more time. Here we go. Yarn over and insert your hook into that last stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Might want to pop your finger on top of those 3 loops to hold them in place while you insert your hook into the stitch that is not a stitch. yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll see that the stitch is attached to both of those stitches below it. I'm going to yarn over again and pull through all 4 of those loops on the hook. The stitch doesn't look that different from the ones next to it. It just sort of disappears into it, and it will fill up a hole that would otherwise make your hand quite chilly when you're wearing the gloves. Just slip stitch to join, and we're going to move on to round 12. Round 12 is really quite easy. We're just going to put 1 half double crochet in each stitch all the way around. The only thing we're going to do that is a little bit different is we're not going to slip stitch to join. So pause the video here and I will meet you at the end of the round. I am at the end of round 12 and I'm not slip stitching to join because we're breaking for the thumb gap. So chain 1 and turn your work around. We'll still be working this round in half double crochets, but we're looking at the back of the stitches in the round below, so it does look a bit different. Make sure you're not confusing this V here on the back of the stitch with the V on the top of the stitch. Make sure you're putting your hook under here, not somehow into this V here. Otherwise, we are just working normal half double crochets, 1 in each stitch, all the way around. So pause the video here and I'll meet you near the end of the round to show you how we finish off this round and start round 14. This is the 25th stitch in round 13, so that means that this funny little spot here needs a stitch too because I have 26 stitches in this round. Okay, so that's the end of round 13, and round 14 begins with a chain 1 and we turn our work again. Round 14 is another round where we just work 1 half double crochet into each of the stitches in the round below. We've got our work facing the right way again, so that's good, but the stitches below us still look backwards, so make sure you're working into the correct spot. And this is also the round where we're going to close up the thumb gap. So if you pause the video here and work your half double crochets around until you're nearly at the end of the round, I'll meet you there and show you how we join up the thumb gap. I am nearing the end of round 14 and this stitch here is my 25th stitch. And knowing that helps me to be sure that I have 1 more stitch to go and I need to put it right here. The top of that first half double crochet in the round below can look a little bit funny, but now we've got that last stitch in, it's time to close the thumb gap. So that is the chain 1 that got us up to height, and that is the top of our first half double crochet. Slip stitch to the top of that first half double crochet and 1 thumb gap is closed. The thumb gap might look a little small, but it's actually comfortable, and a small thumb gap means a warmer hand. However, you might need your thumb gap to be just a little bit bigger to fit your hand. If so, work another round of half double crochets. However, that's going to mean that you're slip stitching to join on a round that is facing inwards. So you've got a choice. Either you can work the rest of your glove with your stitches facing that way, which is what I often do, or you can quite deliberately add another turn, just like that, and work your stitches facing the correct way. That little loop of the turn isn't going to show in the greater scheme of your glove. Let's head into round 15 with 1 half double crochet in each stitch until you reach the thumb gap. So work those half double crochets, pause the video and meet me when you're getting close to the thumb gap. I'm getting close to being on top of that thumb gap. Okay, this is my 26th stitch just here. Pop that in, and that is the stitch that is not a stitch. It just looks a little bit different because it's on top of the thumb gap. And we're going to work a stitch into that, but we're not going to put it into the top of the stitch like normal. I'm going to bring it up close so you can see. Do you see that extra little piece of yarn underneath it? I think if we work into the top of the stitch, it looks really messy. So I'm going underneath to make my half double crochet. And I've caught that extra piece of yarn. And I'm going to slip stitch to that first half double crochet. And I'll show you how it looks. Look, isn't that neater? Anyway, I like it. And we'll start the next round. So chain 1 to get you up to height. And round 16 is going to be a decrease round because we added that extra stitch in the round below, but also because our hands start to get a bit thinner at this point. We're going to put our first decrease in over the first 2 stitches. So we yarn over and insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook. You might want to hold them in place with your finger while you slide your hook into the next stitch and pull up another loop. 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all 4 loops on the hook, which has turned the 2 stitches underneath it into 1 stitch in the next round. Okay, so we're going to work some normal half double crochets for a little bit. We're going to separate our 2 half double crochet decreases. It's not essential that you get them in a specific spot. I just want you to spread them out a little bit in the pattern. Sorry, just grabbing myself a little bit more yarn. Trying to work off this homemade bobbin is not going well for me today. Okay. Okay, how far off am I? I'm going to fold it in half. My first half double crochet decrease was there, so I want my next one to be right about there. I've got a couple more to do before I get there. Just pop those in. Sorry, I lose count so easily. Alright, so yarn over and insert your hook and pull up a loop. Now go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. You've got 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. And that is the last half double crochet decrease for this row. From here, it's just 1 half double crochet in each stitch and then slip stitch to join. So pause and I will meet you at the beginning of round 17. Now, time for round 17. We're going to work round 17 in single crochets, but we're going to put in a few decreases. So fold your glove, keep that loop centered, and we're going to put 1 decrease right about here and another decrease right about there. Just as with the previous decreases, it's not crucial exactly where you put them. We're just trying to spread them out a bit. I'm going to refresh you on a single crochet, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. So you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through. Insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. Just single crochet in each of these stitches until we get around to that spot I pointed to, where I will walk you through the single crochet decrease. Alright, insert your hook in the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook, you might want to hold on to them. Insert your hook in the next stitch, yarn over and pull up another loop. 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that is a single crochet decrease. I'm just going to pop bog standard single crochets in these stitches until we get around to the next spot that needs a decrease, and I'll show you how to do that single crochet decrease again. Okay, time for a decrease. Insert your hook in that first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Insert your hook in the next stitch, yarn over and pull up another loop. 3 loops there, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. For the rest of the round, just put a single crochet in each stitch. Pause the video here and I'll meet you at the beginning of the next and final round. And it's time to start round 18. Chain 1, and all we're doing is putting a single crochet in each stitch the whole way around. So your stitch count is going to stand steady. Mine is at 23 stitches. Yours should be at 1 stitch more than your starting chain. See you at the end of the round. Hooray, hooray! Last single crochet in the glove. Make sure you don't put an extra one in the stitch that is not a stitch, and just slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet, and we are done. Time for the best bit. I love that sound. Pull your hook out and grab your darning needle, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a sneaky way to tie in your ends really neatly. We're going to make that little tail end look like another stitch. So take your needle and insert it just there, catching both loops of the stitch, pull it through, tighten it up a bit, insert it back into that stitch and bring it out at the back there, pull it through, and look at that. It looks just like another single crochet, like the top of just another stitch. But of course we do need to secure it in really well. So I'm just going to flip my glove inside out a bit so I've got a bit of space to weave my tail in. And I'll give you a quick lesson on weaving in your tails. All you're basically doing is taking the end of your yarn up and back a couple of times so that that tail of yarn doesn't come loose and your glove doesn't unravel. It's pretty simple. So I've gone up once, I'm just going back in the other direction. And I'm going to go up here. Trying not to split the yarn. And I'm just going to send it over this way before I snip it. I like my tail to end a reasonable distance from where it went in, so if by any chance part of it does start to poke out, it's quite a way away from where that pretend stitch is, so it doesn't come unraveled. Great, so that's one tail. Of course, you will need to weave in the tail from our starting chain. You won't need to make a pretend stitch with that, you just need to weave it in. Take it up and back and up and back. You haven't got much of a tail, so just do your best with it. You do that and I'll show you how to do the fun bit and put a button on it. You'll need to pop your glove on to figure out where the button goes, so that's a really good excuse to warm my hand up. I really like that little line that you get. It's just from the backward facing crochet and it's only subtle, but I think it looks pretty. Okay, I like to put the button on my wrist bone. That's where I think it looks good, but you position it where you like it and mark that spot using your stitch marker so you can find it when you take the glove off. Okay. Turn it a little bit inside out and thread a bit of the leftover yarn onto your needle. And can I suggest you don't sew your buttons on until you've made both gloves, because sometimes you're right down to the wire with the amount of yarn and you don't want to use too much yarn to sew your button on and then find you can't quite finish your second glove. Snip moment. Love that sound. Okay. This bit is much the same as what we do when we are sewing in our tail ends. You don't need to tie a knot or anything, you just need to take the yarn back and forward a couple of times to secure it nicely to the inside of your glove. Up once, back again. Don't go overboard with this or you'll get like a big lump of yarn and then your gloves won't be super comfortable. So I'll take it up a little bit to the side. There, that looks good. I'm going to poke my needle through and meet it on the other side. And hello needle. Oh, I cracked myself up and then I dropped the needle. Terrible jokes. All right, so we've got the needle on the other side, and now we are just going to sew the button on. Easy peasy. Once you've threaded the button on once, do make sure that the button's like properly against the glove. You'll need to push down on the button like this and give the yarn a big tug, just to make sure when you sew in, pop your needle in and sew in the other part, you're not going to end up with it gaping, which is just not a good look. So now we've got the button attached, I'm going to turn the glove inside out a little bit so we can weave in that last end, just the same as we've been doing with every other tail. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the tutorial and you should have your very own pair of soft and simple fingerless gloves to keep your hands warm. If you'd like the matching slouchy and eternity cowl, check out my tutorial for those. You can actually make the slouchy with the leftover yarn from your gloves if you started with a 100-gram ball. If you have 2 balls of yarn, you can have the entire match set and be totally matchy-matchy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the tutorial, do click like, maybe subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!